Good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Newark Citizen Forum. I'm here today with my co-host, Dr. Chris Purnell.
Good evening.
And replacing Anton Willer, we have Brother Richard Kamari.
No one can replace Anton.
No, yeah, I know. Nobody can replace. He's sitting in Anton's place. Right. But how you doing, Richard? You all right?
I'm fine.
You comfortable? You ready?
I'm ready.
Don't be ashamed. Now the people gonna be saying.
It took me too long to come down here because of all the traffic, but you know, they're blocking all the streets.
I know they're like,
Wiggums and all that stuff.
A whole lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
So, Doc, what you think about the new furniture? You know, we got.
Love
You see,
it.
it's nice.
It's exquisite. I like it.
It's nice, right? You know,
Lovely.
Local 617. You see, we do our members right. You know?
Top shelf there.
The top shelf, right?
What
It's
can I
nice,
say?
right? You know, we're gonna get some people and they might start investigating. That's the, we got some leather couches now.
Yeah, this doesn't look like austerity.
Oh, you know, congratulations on order again, Doc.
Thank you.
To your job. You know, we
Thank
keep
you.
congratulating Dr. Purnell. You know, she got a position with
The Mayor's Commission on the Homeless.
not the
and
Mayor's
Johns
Commission,
Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins Hospital.
I know. Just
Yeah.
updating.
I mean, you know, big shot. I mean, she's
Yeah.
down with Johns Hopkins. You know, Johns Hopkins is a very prestigious hospital in this country. You heard her, right?
Johns Hopkins.
Doc
What
working
is it
for
again?
Johns Hopkins.
It's for general preventive medicine, and so they choose public health doctors and give you the opportunity to lead projects throughout the nation.
Okay.
You hear that? Lead projects throughout the nation. So.
Will you be there tomorrow with the Marion Thompson Wright lecture?
At Rutgers?
Yes, it's all
Yes,
about.
I will.
It's all about health.
I will be there at least for the majority of it.
Okay.
I'm actually going to bring some people from my wellness program. So.
See, Doc, you got to put me down with the wellness thing. I need to start losing a little pounds here. Mark too, by the way. So you can help me and Mark, by the way.
Hey,
So-
you can sign me up too.
Let's get to the issue that I want to talk. You know, we lost on Saturday. We lost Whitney Houston. Unfortunately, you know, one of the greatest voices that I've ever heard. She was a Newark native.
Yes.
That's where a lot of the chaos and the city of Newark is going on currently right now. Like you said, right up the street from this office, they're blocking off streets at Whitney Funeral Home because there's a private viewing tomorrow. There's a big funeral
Yes.
with, you know, all the stars, who's who of the entertainment world
Anybody who's anybody.
is going to be there tomorrow. They're blocking the streets off from the fans, and you're not going to be able to get within 6 blocks of the church.
Definitely.
The masses
tomorrow.
are not invited.
No, you're not invited. Now, beyond the fact that, you know, I think it's it's turned into an elitist funeral, but I am going to respect the family's wishes. I think, you know, all condolences go out to the Houston family, and I think we should respect their wishes if they want a private funeral. I don't know how it's private with 1,500 people, but
Well, for her magnitude, I guess that's what private is.
That's private
for her
is 1,500
magnitude.
people, right? I guess you might be right, you know. But so we should respect it. But there's a bigger question to me, and I think you know, and I know it's on folks' mind, and you know, the reality of the matter is there is circumstances surrounding the death that, to me, is it's a question, and you know, when my daughter looks at Whitney Houston in the future, because, you know, that's probably somebody who she is going to look up to, especially if she take a role in singing. You know, is she viewed really as a role model?
I think it's a difficult question because it's just not superficial. Does Whitney Houston have an impeccable voice? Yes. Can you look to Whitney Houston as someone who was able to aspire to great heights and then inspire others to achieve likewise success? Yes. But if that's all you do, then we lose the true lesson here. The lesson is about the excesses of a life that sometimes come with fame. The lesson is about, you know, her past history of substance abuse. We don't know the certainties of what happened surrounding her death, but there is a deeper and more palpable lesson here. And in particular, as someone who does public health, I just find it sad. I find it sad that here was this woman who was obviously at a place in her life where she needed more intense focus. I would never have left someone alone who was in her condition. And if we don't take away from this what we can do to teach our children so that they don't mimic, you know, every action of Whitney Houston, then this becomes less of a lesson and less of a teachable moment, and then it casts aspersions on whether or not, you know, we should focus on just her voice. But hands down, you can't take away from her what she was able to achieve.
But it's not that we take. I don't take away from she. I think she achieved a lot. Like I said, she's probably one of the greatest voices that I've heard in my life. But I just don't understand, how do you separate it though? You know what I'm saying? How do you separate what she did outside? I mean, because you gotta understand, this isn't something to me. If it was something that happened overnight with Whitney Houston, this is something to me that was on a long trajectory. You know what I'm saying? As far as the world seeing what was going on in her private life. You know what I'm saying? And, it was like in public view. And I don't understand, how do you separate the two? Because he was this great singer, and, we was in love with Whitney when we first heard Whitney. I mean, we used to sit, and every time a Whitney Houston video came on, we would all, be in front of our TV. We'd be playing our little Atari games back then, and Whitney Houston video BET come, everybody shut up, and we'd be listening to Whitney Houston. But then all of a sudden,
wait a minute now, I'm 60, so
yeah, but I'm talking about
30,
me. We
I
was
was 30-something when she burst on the scene, so I don't have that kind of emotional imprinting that younger people.
But
have.
I do have that.
Right.
And to me, I was very disappointed, and you know what I'm saying, because I was so in love with this woman's.
But we should be able to compartmentalize. Clearly, she was a great singer,
right,
and people should admire her for that. But I think there's something deeper. And the whole notion of this needing this celebrity-driven perception that we need role models is something that needs to be more deeply analyzed, because I think it really steers us in the wrong direction, both for our young people. I mean, their role models should be the people around them. And I feel, and I have to admit, this is probably, it's not Scrooge show me, it's not Christmas, but, when this kind of thing happens, we have people dying in Newark every day under extremely dire circumstances. And when I see the reaction to a celebrity so immensely and profoundly over the top, it bothers me. And my sympathies to the family and what she went through, but man, there's something so out of proportion, so imbalanced in terms of the public response to these kind of things. I mean, a role model, no, she's not a role model. She's someone to admire as a singer. She had troubles in her life. I mean, she put them on display with those TV shows, and she seemed to be going in a better direction, which is great. That's something we can learn from. But no, I don't think. God, this is sometime I might actually agree with Chris Christie. She's not a role model. They're lowering this flags not for her life, because she had. That's not something you want to emulate.
Right.
But she's clearly a wonderful singer, and for that, you admire her. You feel sad because it was someone. I mean, in terms of how we associate ourselves with celebrities and particularly musicians, because music is kind of at the core of the way we perceive things as human beings.
Because music touches your soul, and a lot of her songs touch your soul, and so I do think that some of the aura around what's going on is really over the top. I don't disagree with you on that, Richard, but I kind of understand it because of the music that she did, and how it touched folks' soul. I really wish the family, as much. I really wish the family would have done to me a public funeral when it was first saying that it was going to be a prediction. And one of the reasons why, to me, is because I think that deep down Whitney was always a Norker, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you really know, if you was born and raised in the city, you understand the growth of Norkers growing up. That never left her. You know what I'm saying? She kept to her roots.
I mean, I grew up in East Orange, and Whitney's family moved to East Orange soon after the riots. My mom, who's 73 years old, was in New Hope when Whitney sang. Okay, my mom saw Dionne Ward sing when she was very young. So Whitney Houston's death registered with her emotionally, because she saw this young woman, this bright woman with promise, who was from the same hometown, who lived in a similar neighborhood, go on to do things and cross barriers. I think that's what part of the strong emotional pull is, particularly in this community, because Whitney was not a black icon.
Right.
Whitney was an American icon.
Right.
And she was one of those figures that was able to transcend cultures.
Right.
And that's why I think people gravitated toward. Can we respect someone for their talent? Can we respect someone for excellence in their talent? Yes, but at the same time, we have to understand that Whitney Houston suffered from a disease called
Right.
addiction.
Right.
And addiction is an issue that is relevant to this community at large.
Right.
Addiction is an issue that's relevant to households and to families. And if we don't take this as an opportunity to say, what can we learn from Whitney Houston? That's where we're missing.
Well, Doc, here's the
That's
question I
what
want to ask you.
Profoundly relevant.
And you being a doctor, because to me it seems like she had a lot of enablers around
Oh,
her.
definitely.
And
Definitely.
you know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate though, that
Definitely.
stardom, because folks want to be attached to stars, it allows them to be silent. It seems like the only one that was really in the family, and I don't know what the other ones were doing, so but the mother was really trying to
From what I've
rescue her
heard,
to the
definitely.
point of going to the house and knocking on the door and saying, listen, either you coming with me or we gonna go do, you know what I'm saying, do things this way, or so she was really trying to get her
Oh,
daughter
definitely.
to be on the right path. But it just seems to me, when because there's in Newark there's a high, drug abuse problem in the city of Newark, and a lot of people, I have friends. I got a friend of mine that's very close to me, who he thinks sometimes he's fooling me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And what he's doing, and I'm always, getting on him saying, brother, you think I don't know, but I know what you're doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And all you're doing is destroying yourself. But there are other people who do that and they just ignore it, right? And, you know what I'm saying, they don't do anything to, you know what I'm saying, to try to even make them feel guilty or be more cautious, you know what I'm saying, about their approach to it.
Accountable. So as a doctor, I am horribly offended when those in the medical community who are supposed to be professionals become enablers.
Right.
I'm horribly offended because what oath do you take? You've sacrificed and forgotten that oath because I don't know was fame disarming for you, was celebrity just so blanketing and massive that you couldn't think analytically. But we see a pattern of this, and this is why the conversation has to be held. We see a pattern of doctors and other, let's say, latch-on types of people who are enablers around someone's disease or enablers around behavior that is risky, behavior that is deadly and that's lethal. And this is a captive audience. And what I mean by this is a captive audience. Here we have someone who's larger than life, and here we have people loving someone who's larger than life. And you're fine. It's okay to love her. But if we don't stop in this moment and say, kids, what can we learn from Whitney Houston other than how impeccable her voice was? We've lost. And if we don't say where are we as a community, both professionals, both loved ones, both friends, both community citizens, where are we enabling this disease at large?
So,
Well, that's the
Richard, what
issue
was
of, to make it really specific to Newark now.
Right.
The Family Service Bureau, which is a program, part of the New Community Network,
Right.
last year, we received, I'm on the board.
You
We
plug in your
received-
community? Don't be plugging in your community.
This is service related. Last year, they received over 1,200 requests for substance abuse addiction
Wow.
services.
Uh-huh.
1,200, that's just one program.
Right.
And it's almost all Newark residents.
Right.
So clearly there's an issue here.
Yes.
There's an issue of how we deal with substance abuse.
Right.
There are not enough resources,
Right.
as Integrity House is always telling us.
Right.
There's a whole issue of how we deal with drugs, period.
Right.
Personally, I think we need to decriminalize it, turn it into a health issue rather than a crime issue.
Right.
We've been dealing with substance abuse and drugs in terms of prohibition for over 100 years now.
Right.
Where's it gotten us?
Right.
Nowhere.
But you don't think if we decriminalize it that it makes the situation worse?
No.
That now they're underground and, you know what
No,
I'm saying?
I mean,
At least when
decriminalizing-
that decriminalize it brings it out open
Modeling
a little
after-
more. Now it becomes, I can do it because
Well,
it's legal. It's like
never,
smoking
it's never going to
cigarettes.
happen. Politically, it will never happen.
Right.
But if you follow the models in some other countries,
Right.
that has not happened. In terms of decriminalizing takes the profit out of it, which will get rid of all the blood flowing in our streets from the gang
Right.
issues. It also, again, turns it into a health issue rather than a
Yeah, but
crime
you
issue.
can't. Well, the other
But
countries that
people-
have
it's like,
legalized
look at all
it,
the
they
people
have
in
legal.
prison, though. I mean, all these people in prison, and the war on drugs,
Right.
as people said, a war on young black men.
Right.
Because almost all the people, the vast majority of people in these prisons, because of these draconian, Rockefeller laws,
Right.
are in there for drugs. But
Right.
not selling. I mean,
Right.
possession of marijuana.
Right.
I mean, you look at the percentage of blacks in prison, the vast majority in there because of drug issues.
Right.
And most of them are not drug kingpins. So I
Right.
mean, there's so many elements to this in terms of the impact on the communities
I
we
mean,
serve.
I kind of different
That's a whole other
opinion.
issue, but
I probably agree with the legalization of marijuana only because I think that it does benefit medically. But when it comes down to hard drugs like cocaine and heroin, you know what I'm saying, that's where you split with me on, because I just don't think that,
Well, you
you know
gotta
what I'm saying,
regulate it,
legal
turn
line.
it into a government type of thing, where
Yeah,
it's regulated, you got to go
Well, really, you
somewhere
don't
and
even
get it.
have to buy heroin no more. You can buy OxyContin. You can still, you know what I'm saying,
Prescription
prescription
drug
drugs and
abuse
be
is
just as
bad
it'd be
as illicit
just as
drugs.
bad.
We
You
have a
know,
drug-driven society.
Yeah,
Dr.
right.
Just as
is
bad.
talking about
Yeah.
that.
Just as
Whether
bad.
it's illegal drugs or legal drugs. You know,
Right.
these
Bad.
doctors pushing this stuff on people. They're being paid by the drug companies.
Yeah.
And they push them on people when they not necessarily they don't need them.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other issue. But
Yeah.
obviously, someone like Whitney Houston fell victim to that through her own choices, through the people around her, things around her. But she's not alone. She's just
No, I agree. She's not
She's
alone.
not
There's a lot
alone.
of folks out there that would.
She's not alone.
I would just hope that those people, you know, take a lesson from them. But you know, I do hope that the Houston family get whatever peace that they need in their lives, and that they get over very soon the death of their loved one, and that God bless them. Because I think it is a hurting feeling to lose someone as great as Whitney Houston was, and hope, and we don't know yet, but a lot of us presume the manner. Listen, if it was something else, I'd be the first one to say, well, you know, it was a medical issue rather than drugs. Would be a much better story, because you can best believe they out there looking for the story soon after she's buried. The press is going to change to she died from this, and you know, people going to start bashing. So I'm
As soon
hoping
as
that
her
the
death
yeah, so
certificate is actually finalized.
yeah, they're gonna, you know, it's gonna be open season. So hope everything goes well with the family. Just a quick thing, you know, this church supposed to be coming here. Like, them crazy folks supposed to be protesting.
Westboro.
Somebody told me about that. These are people from Kansas, the
They're,
anti-gay.
are they from
people or
Kansas
whatever.
or Pennsylvania? I'm not
No,
sure
they're
where
from Kansas.
But they
Kansas.
protest.
They protest at
funerals.
soldiers' funerals.
Yeah, but I don't believe they come to Newark, because if they do, I'm telling y'all right now, if Westboro Church comes and protests Whitney Houston, I'm telling you right now, the cops gonna have,
but
it's gonna be
maybe
some
this will
problems out
cause
there. So
them
I would
to
hope they don't come.
rethink their strategy.
Well, listen,
Maybe
I can.
coming to Newark will help them rethink, because the strategy
These
is just
people are,
horrible.
Listen.
they are profoundly crazed. They will go anywhere.
It's horrible.
No, listen. The places they went to before, Richard, has not been like Newark. Now I'm telling you right now that if they wind up surrounded by a bunch of African American mourning Whitney Houston fans, and they out there calling her names, and I'm telling you right now that if they're not surrounded by
Wrath
police,
of God.
then they gonna meet God sooner than
Hey.
sooner than they
I don't
want.
understand. Their whole thing is usually anti-gay, so I'm not sure what
Well,
the thing is.
It's anti-gay. It is the whole wrath coming down on mankind for its sins and excesses.
Yeah.
But they use other events that let's say attract numbers and attention. Soldiers' funerals, whatever. It's
But they gonna get more attention than
but if they come to Newark with that, I think they'll be in for a little bit of.
Yeah, I don't think they bold enough to come. I would like to see him, because God gonna help them if they come. You know, I wanted to talk about the article that came out on Sunday in reference to the city's budget. Well, this is to me is a lead way into, because you know the mayor is about to submit his budget
Yes.
to the city of Newark. So one of the things that they're doing before is to
Early.
yeah, well, they got to do it early because the state is in here now. The state is monitoring it, and so they shooting a bow across the council. They shooting a shot across the council's bow because they want the council to agree to this MUA. And so an article came out on Sunday in reference to the council's expenses and how much it was costing the council, and you know they're now complaining about council making part-time. They're asking the council to and here's my problem with it, that it's all symbolism. It's all symbolism. That they borrowed $37 million from the state last year. If the council gave up every dime of their budget, that it wouldn't be nowhere near enough to plug the deficit that we have in the city. So it's symbolic.
0.01%.
Right. So it's symbolic, right? And they try to say, but the problem that I have with this is that it seems like we're trying to beat each other to who gets to the bottom first, right? And so they go lay off the workers, they go lay off these folks, they cut these salaries, and now they come in, you know what I'm saying, after the council. When is the discussion going to actually start changing into revenue generating ideas? When are we going to have that discussion in the city? No, last year
raise
when we had the budget, Richard, we sat down before they laid off the sanitation workers. We did analysis on what they were paying the private contractor in the South District to do sanitation services. They were paying the private contractor $1.8 million a year to do sanitation services. When we add up what the average, because it's 5 districts in this city, they do 1 district, the sanitation workers do the other 4. When we added up what those salaries was and what those benefits, we came with less than $1 million that they were spending in other 4 districts. And we said to them, how can you be paying ACE $1.8 million to do 1 district, yet you only paying $1 million doing all the other 4 districts? And so they realized that ACE had too big of a contract, and they said that once the contract was over, that they would make sure that they bring that work in-house. Lo and behold, yesterday on the council, they trying to give Waste Management $1.9 million, more than what they was paying ACE.
For what?
To do now they want to change the contract from ACE to Waste Management, and instead of decreasing the contract,
so
they want to pay $1.9 million for the contract for this 1 district. Now, what I said to them last year when we were talking, I said, why don't we convert the sanitation department from just providing the service to creating it to a revenue generating business? Because the city of Newark doesn't try to make a profit. We got equipment to get people to make dumpsters. We got equipment to pick up garbage. So why don't we use our equipment to go out here and bid for these stores? Why don't we turn around and have dumpsters for our residents, and we, instead of them getting a dumpster from Waste Management, they get a dumpster from the city of Newark? Why don't we create a revenue generated a business with the sanitation department? Because whatever Waste Management or these other private companies doing, they have to pay their workers and they got to make a profit. But all we have to do is pay our workers. We just want to provide the service. So why not create a revenue generator so where you bring income in the city and you can maintain workers and people can have stable and better jobs? But yet we're not down that we're not having this conversation. We back to cutting workers. We're back to furloughs. We're back to layoffs. And I don't understand how people who claim that they love kids so much, and we just had this conversation last week about education and people's environment, that they claim to love kids so much that they want environment, yet they care less about their parents. That they claim that they want to give the kids tools to be educated, yet they take away the ability for parents to be able to provide for their kids so that they can have a learning environment.
That has always driven me nuts when people always talk about the children. Hey, I love the children, of course.
Right.
But if you focus just on the children, exactly. What about all the grown-ups around them? And they'll be dysfunctional and disabled economically. We got to multitask here. But you're right. This whole thing, this council thing is symbolic. It drives. It's frustrating because
it's a wedge issue.
It's kind of a wedge issue, but more deeply than that, it's the issue of how do we make things work. You know, you had a very analytical approach last year to that whole issue of the waste thing. But we got to talk, and I agree. We got to talk about revenues.
Right.
Now, there's all kinds of things that are possibilities. You know, that committee that Bob Kervin was on last year, they laid out some things which we're still talking about. I'm part of this kind of ad hoc group. We got to look at stuff like taxing these empty seaport containers.
Right.
We got to look at increasing the taxi rental. We got to look at maybe imposing a tax on runoff water. You know, we have all this impermeable land in Newark, whether it's in Port Authority or on these parking lots, that affects our sewer runoff.
Right.
That should be taxed.
Right.
We got to look at maybe putting together, instead of a payroll tax, a 1%. One thing to talk about was a 1% tax on income that's earned in the city.
Right.
It's a little, again, that would be dicey politically,
Yes,
but we got to look at all this stuff.
Right.
And there's all kind. You know, maybe we need to look at the county taking more of responsibility for policing, for libraries, etc. Maybe looking at this again. None of this stuff would probably ever happen, but regionalizing fire protection.
Right.
I know a lot of firemen, so I don't want them to get mad at me. But I'm just saying these are the kind of things that need to be on the table and clearly and thoughtfully and carefully analyzed. I don't see that approach being taken.
No, right, because to me,
and these one-stop, you know, these
one-shot ideas, exactly,
and it's frustrating.
Right.
These are tactical maneuvers.
Right, but one of the things that
reflect strategy.
Well, one of the things that was said to me when I had this discussion today, they said to me, you know, the problem with that is that you looking for a long-term solution. These people not really here to govern. They here to just get, you know what I'm saying, get through the next budget year. So, you know what I'm saying, they can have a record to run on when they leave. You know what I'm saying? When they leave during the time that they do leave this town, which is very soon, by the way. But that's the problem. Right, but that's the problem. Right.
This year, probably at least a $50 million hole.
But that's the problem. But that's where they want to create these one-shot gimmicks, and they want to force the council's hand and say, right. They want to force the council's hand and say, if you don't create the MUA, then we're going to put pressure on you, and your budget's going to be tossed. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying, like, what are we talking about revenue generating? One of the ideas that I gave Richard was actually a consumption tax. I told them that we have 1 million people that come in this town. We should tax lunch. We should tax consumption from the hours of 6 to 6, where we put on a 1.5%, 2% tax on the consumption all over the city.
You're gonna hit.
All of regressive.
That's, yeah, you're gonna hit.
It don't. But see, to me, the reason why I'm doing, but Richard, the reason why I said 6 to 6, it don't matter to me because I think that we all should chip in when it comes to that. And I'm saying that I wouldn't mind paying an extra 2% if I know that it's going to keep people working, it's going to maintain jobs. But I'm saying to you, the tax is only going to be from 6 to 6. So this is a consumption tax. So it's really targeted at those people that come through town, that travel through here.
Tax on particularly, let's say, unhealthy food items. You know, the doctor would be in favor of that.
They just not going to buy that. They just not going to buy it.
But let me just say this, because I think you said something that was very important, and it gets us back to why this is being made an issue of. I believe this is being made an issue of for perception only. And why I say for perception only, the issue when I say what's being made an issue of, what the city council members are earning and what their staff earns, and we're not talking about revenue generating opportunities, and we're not having, you know, the foresight to plan forward into the future. Because at this point, sadly, I see less strategy happening in the city of Newark and more tactics. And what I mean by tactics is, how do I garner a quick win or an easy win without really hunkering down and solving problems that are going to take more effort, more time, more commitment, and more input. Why I said this is a wedge issue, because you're at a time where the conversation of the haves versus the have-nots is really hyper, right? Within culture and within society. You're at a time when people are talking about the 99 versus the 1. So if you can create the perception that your city council is not like you, if your city council is not of you, you can try to, in essence, let's kind of pass the aspersions along, not just on, you know, the mayor's office or what he's doing, but what's happening citywide. And I really think that's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate because it makes a false issue. And whenever you make a false issue, you sugarcoat and you get away from something that can actually bring forth a fruitful or a sustainable change. And so when something like this is put out, I think we should always immediately push back to, okay, this is valid, there's an economic downturn, people are hurting, but what's even more valid is, what are we doing to really, let's say, jumpstart this economy? What are we doing to really make this city self-sufficient? What are we doing really to make long-term gains on problems that are quite oppressive?
And Richard, this is part, because you made the point, and you're absolutely correct, is what are their solutions?
He said I was correct.
You usually correct now and then, Richard. I mean, you know. but you're right on, you know what I'm saying, what will they run on? I agree with you 100%. Because this city has not, to me, you know, for someone who wants to run, I seen an article today from a thing saying Cory Booker may be a 2016 presidential.
I've heard that before.
I've always heard that he would be a presidential candidate from the time that we first started. But I just seen an article today where they printed with his name as a potential 2016 candidate. But I'm trying to say, what has this kid done? What has he done? What is he running on, Richard? Because to me, it would seem that you would, if you're really about transforming government, if you're really about changing the way urban cities are, then you will be talking about how do we deal not only with the educational systems, right, that you want to privatize and take control over, but how we actually deal with the economics. You know what I'm saying? And you know, instead of just giving your friends land and building teachers' villages, that to me, I don't care what they say, that's just going to be, you know what I'm saying, a program that is not, it's not going to be a teachers' village. You know, they put it that way. So this notion that somehow we're gonna create a village just for teachers that's gonna live up in here is it's the most ridiculous thing
They got
that
huge
you know what I'm
amounts
saying.
of
So if you're not a teacher, you can't move in these.
huge amounts of
So
government
they're really
for that.
right. So they're really gonna turn down a regular tenant that come up in here. I just think that notion is just is really awful.
Well, they can't do that legally.
Yeah, you can't.
That's
Well,
why this whole notion of a
They're
teacher
a
village
fair
is
housing
puzzling to me.
Right. It's like you separating us now. You create, this is a teacher's village. I mean, whatever.
But
But
you're
these
right.
are the gimmicks
Whole-
that they utilize in this administration.
Corey-
And I'm saying, what is this guy really going to run on? What is his accomplishments?
I'm not sure. I mean, Corey came in, there were huge challenges in terms of governance of Newark when he came in. I don't think they've been adequately met. And I mean, I say that respectfully, but when you look at our city, the landscape of need in our town is just incredible. We got the poverty rate of almost 30%.
Yes.
We've got an unemployment rate of, they reported unemployment rate 17%. We have per capita income of $17,000. The median income for a family of four is $27,000. We have 44% of children under 18 in Newark, which is 26% of our population. 44% of them live in poverty.
Right.
Young children, under 18. We have issues. I mean, the housing situation is incredible.
Right.
Nobody wants to talk about rental housing.
Right.
That's affordable for very low income people.
Right.
Oh, we've done enough. The housing authority's trajectory is such, they're just reducing their portfolio.
Right. They redo.
I
Right.
mean, it's-
They're getting out the business of low income
And it
housing.
drives me nuts because it's
Right.
like, well, who's going to deal with the material conditions? And I'm not saying we want a city of the poor, but we have a city that has significant population of poor people.
Right.
And how do we deal with that?
Right.
We've got to deal with it in terms of economic policies that will raise people up. You reduce poverty in two ways, right? You either get rid of poor people, or you help make them less poor.
Well, that's my point. They
That's
think
just
that
not
poor
a-
people going to disappear,
right.
and I'm
But-
like, where are these people disappearing?
Let me just say this because the CNN correspondent Fareed Zakaria just did a fabulous piece on this exactly. It is an American phenomenon not to truly deal with issues around poverty. And what I mean by American phenomenon is that somehow we excuse ourselves not to deal with the very poor. There is this thought, as there is with healthcare. Well, if you need it in this country, you'll get it somehow.
Right, right.
Somehow it'll happen for you, and that
safety
excuses
net.
the safety net that excuses us and disallows us from really protecting the opportunity
Right.
for all people to prosper, because the opportunity for all people to prosper really isn't there.
Right.
And what government should and can do is level that playing field and create that opportunity equitably for all folks. But I just think Newark is just a microcosm of what's happening on a larger scale throughout the nation.
Oh, I agree.
Well, I mean, Mitt
when's the last time
Romney
you
said
heard
it best,
Democrat-
right? That they got
Well,
a safety, that the poor, he ain't worried
He's
about
not
the
concerned
poor,
about the very
'cause
poor.
they got a safety net. I mean, that's the
when
problem.
was last, forget Republicans, when was the last time you heard Democrats
Right.
talking about poor people?
Oh, no, I
No one
agree.
talks
You heard
about-
Obama talk about poor people.
I agree.
No
I
one
agree.
talks about
I
poor
agree.
people.
Uh,
It's
except-
taboo.
Well, he
No,
talking
but
about
not
except-
but
it's
it's
99%.
Except when it comes to education. Then all
Right.
of a sudden, these
Right.
people who don't
Right.
say a mumbling word about
Right.
poor housing or poor healthcare or
Right,
poor
right.
or poor employment opportunities, all of a sudden they're so concerned about students of color.
You
in
know
these cities.
who was
And-
the
but
last
that's
It makes me
Democrat
very
to go?
skeptical.
That's
John
my
Edwards
point.
was the last Democrat to talk about.
But that's
Who's
my,
that?
John Edwards.
whilst he
He
was
did.
doing other
I mean, he
things.
went, unfortunately, but he did. That
But
was
that,
part of his
but that's
platform.
but that's my whole
There's
point with
always
this whole.
percentage, right?
But that's my whole point
Yes.
with this education argument, right? That, what I'm saying, it seems to me like they trap kids into a failing education. They create the conditions for kids not to succeed in school, and then they come in those same areas and say, your kids aren't learning now, we want to take over your schools, and we want
It's a
to,
very
I mean, it's
interesting
it's a corporate mentality. I mean, it's almost like a setup, like you set up the Fed. It's like what Bain Capital did to companies. They come in and, companies that were in distress, they borrow and put them in debt, and then they turn around and they kill the companies. I mean, this is what they do into our urban areas, and then they expect for our kids to survive and to be educated in an environment that they don't have a decent place to live in, that they don't have food on the table, that they don't have clothes on their back, that their mothers and fathers is working 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet. I mean, at what point in time do we really have a serious discussion about how do we change that dynamic and not this
Because
this
that's when
pie
we-
in the sky idea of a teacher's village
We don't-
that
That's
somehow
when
we're
we
going to
become a
create this
community
bubble.
that's truly rooted in holistic.
Yeah, but what?
care
But
or
Doc, I'm just curious, right?
well-being
That's not
of
the American
people.
way.
But that's not the American
But
way.
why-
We don't integrate things. We don't look
Right,
at
but
things,
why?
yeah.
But Richard, why are we letting them create this bubble? It's like we let them create a bubble in the city of Newark, Teachers Village, and everybody in here is going to live happy and prosper and get good education, and you know what I'm saying? Everybody outside that bubble, right, is not going to survive. Now, do they really believe that nobody's going to come pop that bubble? I mean, you know, you can't be the only one on your block with a nice house with a white picket fence. I tell my members this all the time. It's the reason why you have to be proactive for even non-union, even people that's non-union workers. You have to fight for their jobs, because at the end of the day, it can't be your kid on the block with the only bike. It can't be your house with the only television. It can't be, you know what I'm saying, your family with the only car, because guess what's going to happen? Somebody's coming to dinner. Right. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's coming in your house. Somebody's taking your kid bike. I mean, you know, to believe that you're going to live in this isolation where you're the only one that's going to prosper, it's just a fantasy.
You know,
in
the
this
American
city.
ethos of this rugged individualism has really become very toxic. I mean, I get that on one level, but you know, politically we've been able to use it. You know, certain political parties have been able to use that to separate people. You know, one of the most illustrative quotes in American history, I use it in one of my poems, was Jay Gould, one of the robber barons in the late 1800s who built the railroads, first recipients of corporate welfare. He said, I can hire half the working class to kill the other half. That's American history, when you look at American history. And it's so true. It's why we have white working class people becoming Tea Party members.
Right.
Why they're running for Republicans. I mean, totally against their economic interests.
Right.
But they do it because race is such a profound, at the core of this country's ethos, you know, our inability to deal with racial issues. And race has always been used as a tool for class privilege. But of course we have no classes in the United States, right? Sure. But these are the kind of things that are really, it gets complicated. It gets, you know, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts to this. But we have to start sitting down and looking at the bigger picture, whether it's specific to Newark or, you know, nationally. And it relates to all these environmental factors.
But listen, they'll move on with the issue, but I'm hoping that the administration see that, because I've already started some conversations on Newark Speaks that, you know, shout out to my Newark Speaks followers too. I've already started some, you know, I got a lot of phone calls today about some stuff that I posted on Newark Speaks today, and I'm letting folks know I'm not letting up this time. You know what I'm saying? I've given this administration too big of a pass. They've underestimated me, you know what I'm saying? You know, but, you know, underestimate me at your own peril, because I'm letting you know right now, I'm not going to let up on what I think you're doing to the city anymore. At the end of the day, we either come to the table and you're going to be inclusive, or you know what, we taking our city back. And I think it's time that we take our city back. This, I want to move it.
Figure out what that means and how it works.
Oh, which one?
So,
taking the city back?
Taking the city back.
Well, I'm not, because I don't disagree.
Different opinions.
Richard, I agree with you, but I don't disagree. I'm not trying to say take it back to what, because I know people get this whole notion that somehow that I'm so defensive of what the last administration did, and that's not, because I disagree with a lot of things that Sharp did. Listen, I sat there and listened to some of that crap that was being said at that table when we was at Essex County College, where people started like acting like they wasn't in power to enact some changes. And let me say something. Yes, and they lucky I wasn't on that panel, because there is no excuse why we've been in power for 42 years in this city, and yet and still that African Americans and minorities in this city don't, you know what I'm saying, have don't have the things that they need to have a better community than what they already have. And I'm gonna say it again. If you look at Miami, if you look at the migration of Cubans going into Miami, they did not come over here with wealth. These people did not come over here with money in their pockets, but they used government to build to create a system where they ensured that they were going to be a part of the economic restructuring of Miami. Now, some people say, well, Rock, you know, they had drugs. And listen, I'm not saying they didn't. But what they did, though, is if somebody came to them and said, I want to build a hotel, they said, you can build that hotel, but you got to take Richard with you to build this hotel. And I'm saying in the city of Newark, for 42, we didn't do that. We didn't do that here. And I'm saying that we made the Miles Burgers rich. We made the Jacintos rich. We made all of these folks. Alfayella. Listen, Dick, man. So I'm not saying take it back to that. I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, that I'm saying we need to get it out of the hands of those who really not in our interest at this point in time. They worse than, you know what I'm saying. If we thought that was bad, the folks that's up in here now, you know, at least, you know what I'm saying, the folks that that had it the last time understood that they, you know, they had to they had a population that they had to make sure that was actually at least surviving. And they, unfortunately, they became dependent on it.
Unfortunately, the only economics they proposed for that
was government jobs.
Jobs.
I agree.
But that should be part of it. It should be more.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. I agree with you
1970, while the political complexion changed, literally, it really didn't do anything but usher in an era of neo-colonialism.
In addition to the fact that, Richard, we owned our businesses prior to that.
Exactly.
And that's what bothers me, is that we sold our businesses and our property for those government jobs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So,
That was the poison pill of integration.
Right. Well, I don't know if it's a poison pill, other than the fact I think that there were elected officials in here that understood that if you grew in a private business, if you grew in wealth, then you became independent and you would hold them more accountable. However, if I got you a public job, you now become dependent upon me to maintain that public job, and I can control you more. But that's a different conversation, right? We'll be talking about that all night. Yeah, right.
But that does, something I'm always asked, as a community organizer in Newark and policy advocate, how come Newark doesn't have more organizing and all that stuff? I say, look, this is one case where the size of Newark is important. Now, Newark, the issues aren't different, but our size is so small, everything is so compressed that the working class, moderate income people, you would usually depend for change and organizing. They work for City Hall, the Board of Ed, the Housing Authority. They were very vulnerable to all kinds of political pressure throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that was one of the things that sort of was a barrier to having the kind of change we needed. And unfortunately, this is what we're left with at this point.
So last issue I wanted to talk about is Occupy Newark situation.
We have to.
They're gone.
Well, I mean, they're gone.
They're no longer occupied.
They're gone. I mean, the council voted to lift their ban, and if you go down there right now, the police is standing in front of the park and ensuring that they don't come back. Now, listen, I mean, I support protests. So I don't want to, knock what they're doing. And I actually, loved the movement when it first began. I actually thought this was an opportunity for, a group of people that we can actually, different organizations who was trying to get people out there in the masses, that we can actually utilize this movement as an umbrella where we all can actually come together and move working people's agenda. However, it got bogged down into GAs, General Assemblies, and this and all of that other nonsense that went on, and no leader.
Yeah, I still don't know.
We don't lead it. So
what they achieved or what
so I got pros and cons about my feelings on this. What's your feelings, Richard, as a community activist and somebody who actually might have slept in that park 30 years ago if you wasn't 60 years old?
No park sleeping. I mean, I respect that. You got to respect the notion of protest, of bringing attention to things. One of the things as an older person, involved with this, you have to check yourself to make sure you're not responding out of defensiveness. And it was cool, what they were doing. It was part of a national movement. I was not that close to it, to be honest with you. So I know there were some reports about they were doing certain things in the park and questioning.
They offered my son drugs.
Yeah, well, that's not good.
And they told me that they had a right to do that, by the way, just to be clear.
They have a right to do that?
Well, I was told that, when we questioned them about the drug use that was being, and they said that they were adults, that we can't control that. So,
I mean, I don't know what their plan is now, if they're going to still remain involved with issues, which would be fine. I know some of them came to a meeting that was Monday night about the whole, the Newark Public Schools reorganization plan at Marquise Lewis's church. There were a few of them who came there, so they seem to be focusing on that. I think there were some quotes about that in the story, I think. So, hey, more the merrier, I guess. As long as,
I was waiting sleeping in the park.
Yeah.
I mean,
what do you think, Doc? Did you sleep in the park? No, I was out there.
No, I didn't sleep in the park. My last camping day was trying to get basketball tickets. But I always appreciated the organic quality of the Occupy movement, right? I am the daughter of a one-time black nationalist. I am the daughter of someone who marched on Washington. And so I was always appreciative of civil disobedience and holding, government and elected officials and elected persons accountable. But I was never quite sold on what Occupy Newark was doing. And that could have been partly my lack of trying to get involved and to understand it, but it seemed a little bit to me too loose. It seemed a little bit to me too much of a mimic of, oh, let's have an Occupy Newark. There is an Occupy Wall Street. There is an Occupy Teaneck. There is an Occupy East Orange, although it never formalized. Let's have an Occupy Newark. And I wasn't sure that it was born out of a necessitated need or something, or whether or not it was, this is my turn to be angry. This is my turn to get my voice heard. And because it lacked some of that cohesiveness, I wasn't sure what its goals ever were, other than to sleep in the park.
Well, that's really what the goal to me was, because nothing really came out of
Occupy
it.
thing is kind of amorphous. I mean,
Yeah.
No, definitely.
The idea
Definitely.
of protesting, the 99%. I mean, that's a strategic.
Well, the 99% thing was the
That's a very
smartest
good
thing that came up out
Well,
of
yeah,
that.
it's-
I mean, that's the best route. But the problem
didn't
is,
become-
but they should have capitalized that.
But
That
that
should have been
became
there.
almost a political movement,
Right,
right?
but
Yeah, where does it go then?
Where does it go? And here, they were just
Like you
sleeping
said,
in military
it
park.
seems to be more of a tactic than a strategic
Right.
move, and I'm not sure what this
Well, they should have.
strategy is.
Let me tell you something. The 99% thing is the mantra that they should have utilized and propelled them. They should have organized and did what the Tea Party did, and that is utilize their numbers to actually change people in Congress. You're not going to be able to get the things you want if you actually don't change the folks who actually pass the laws that creates the system that's around you. The problem with them is that they believe that they can change the system. And you know what I'm saying? The reality of the matter is that we live in a democracy, and you're not going to replace democracy in this country with some new.
Yeah, but we live, and this is another show.
Yeah,
We probably live in the worst, in the most.
it don't matter though. It's not changing though,
In terms
Richard.
of
Let's get
democracy,
reality.
we have the most dysfunctional democracy in the
It don't matter, Richard. That's the democracy.
I know,
They
I
make
know.
it better, but please don't think you're gonna change democracy.
Well,
That's not gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? It's just not gonna happen. You're not gonna change this to a totalitarian country
No, I'm
where
talking about that.
we have
I'm
one
talking about-
rule, and I mean,
there
what
are
else are you gonna
systems-
replace?
There are structural systems of democracy that are different from
The
what
GA, well, the Occupy was
I'm
this.
talking about proportional representation.
Right.
I'm talking about a system
Right.
that is locked into Democrats and Republicans. A system where almost 99% of the districts in this country are gerrymandered to the point where incumbents.
Yeah, but
always
it,
win.
but it could be changed if people will participate. The problem is apathy stop people from participating. See, I got to be honest with you. The reason why I throw that argument out because I see too many people who's not participating in democracy. The reason why it is so, you can't say to me that when we have a congressional district of 250,000 people, and yet still we only have 7,000 to come out and vote for our congressman, that somehow that's gerrymandering. What happened to the other 243,000 people?
Well, that
and
goes
you know,
full circle
coming
to
out
the
and
first
vote.
topic. Imagine if all the energy, the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people mourning for Whitney Houston would focus that also on the local.
I agree. But to change democracy, you have to participate in democracy.
Right.
So the reality of the matter is that instead of us sleeping in tents, we need to be organizing on how it is that we participate in democracy. And if we participate in democracy as the 99%, guarantee you that we can change it. Listen, when I listen to some of the rhetoric that these Republican candidates, I mean, come on, they want to control women's bodies, they want to attack unions, they want to attack workers. I mean, listen, some of these folks, if they get in office, man, I'm actually afraid.
I'm glad
There was a
so
point.
crazy.
Listen, there was a point
I
in
am too.
time.
I was gonna
Listen,
say, but I
there was a
think
point in time when I
that's
didn't used to believe the rhetoric these folks said, but I actually am starting to believe that if these folks get in office, they're actually going to do some of this nonsense that they talking about doing. And listen, we need people to actually participate in the system because they believe that the only people that are Americans, the only people that participate in the system or that's civilized are the people that actually think like them.
We need to redefine what it means to be a patriot.
Well,
Yes, we do.
Patriot. Well,
that's another
that
subject.
means you
Listen,
really
we
need to
ran out.
understand this country. A lot
Right.
of people don't.
We
We're a
unfortunately.
historical system.
Unfortunately, we ran out of time. I want to thank my guest, Dr. Chris Purnell, and I want to thank our guest, Richard Kamari, for sitting in for Anton Wheeler. Trust me, this won't be Richard's last time doing it because he loves this.
I'm humbled and honored.
So,
I hope I did Anton.
yeah, you did Anton very proud. So, we'll see you next time, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Go out.
Good night.